when rain falls from the sky, it lands on everybody's property.
I think at one time and one place, almost all animals have been hurt by contaminants in the water.
No! My favorite hat. My mom's gonna kill me. For the past few years, our environmental club at Culbreth has been cleaning up Morgan Creek. We were going to learn more about the stream from George Norris, who helps protect streams in our state.
As I said earlier, one of the things a lot of groups like to do is they want to find out basically what's the water quality like in our stream. And there are a couple of different ways to do that. One is chemical monitoring, and one is biological monitoring. I can't take one test and walk away from here and say I know all about this stream. However, there's something else I can do that might give me a little bit of a clue about the long-term health of the stream. That's called biological monitoring, looking for macroinvertebrates. All right, let's see what we got. Okay, let's back up just a little so I can sit this down. Let's see if we got anything interesting here. Looks like a... Okay.
Is that one of those penny things?
Y'all can drop anything right in there.
Slimy.
Yeah, he's kind of slimy. Yeah, look close. A lot of these things are small, and you'll start to see them wiggle. I know we got at least one in there. Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's a crane fly, which actually turns into something that looks remarkably like a large mosquito. It doesn't resemble itself later in life at all. Another thing that's just good to do is, despite all the emphasis I put on biological monitoring and chemical monitoring, is sometimes just going with the basics. Just coming back to a stream and looking at it, noticing its changes over time. Does it smell funny? Is the water level very high even though it hasn't rained much? Is it not normally that color? I mean, those might not be the more in-depth issues, but sometimes really the basic stuff is what we overlook.
We really learned a lot, but the more we learned, the more we realized we didn't know. So we decided to investigate the things that affect the health of our stream. Back at school, we did some research and decided to break into teams to look at the stream's health in different ways, like what's in the stream, wastewater problems, pollution, and things we could do to help the stream. Each team figured out what we needed to know and who we needed to ask.
This is Eric Fletcher. I'm from Culbreth Middle School. May I please speak with Reginald Sutton?
A good treatment plant process would consist of grit removal, some type of sedimentation, activated sludge, clarified, and then some type of chlorination and dechlorination before it's discharged into the stream.
After our wastewater team talked to Mr. Sutton, Don Francisco, a scientist who studies wastewater, showed us the wastewater treatment plant that empties into our stream.
Okay, I want you guys to come up here. You all came out here with some sort of a mental image of what sewage was going to look like. You came out here with that image because you make sewage, don't you? And you look down there, and it doesn't look like you thought it looked, right?
Are there things you can't remove from the water?
There are things we can't remove, but most of the things that we can't remove, we can't measure either. So I know, for example, that I've got organic compounds in a wastewater discharge, but I don't know what organic compounds there are. I can't measure them. I don't have techniques to measure them. And so I know they're there, but I don't know what they are. And that means that I don't know whether they're harmful or not either.
I'll never think of wastewater the same way again, but the other teams still had lots of questions.
Have man-made chemicals in the water really caused health problems for animals? What does storm drain runoff do to our creeks?
What kind of pollutants are tested for in the creeks?
If you look at the pollutants that come into the waters, they come from a variety of sources. They come from point sources, which are industries or municipalities that actually have a pipe and discharge their treated waste to a water body. And then there's a bigger group of pollution. If you looked at a pie, it would be over 3/4 of the pie of the pollution would be non-point sources, and that's when rainwater falls on land and it doesn't soak into the ground. What runs off picks up pollutants along the way. It can pick up sediment or heavy metals or nutrients, and those get taken into the surface waters.
Garbage or litter tossed out the side of a car or truck or left on the side of the highway is part of the stream that goes through a storm drain into a creek, down the river, and eventually may make it to the ocean.
Well, I knew that when the whale had beached, there wasn't a large chance that it would be alive or be alive very long. The first item that we pulled out of the stomach when we first cut into it was this Borax bottle. I think certainly the ingestion of all this garbage contributed to the death of the animal. The fact that the animal was so emaciated and didn't have any food in her stomach and just had all this plastic and garbage would lead me to believe that it was a large contributing factor to her death.
I think at one time and one place, almost all animals have been hurt by contaminants in the water. We know, for example, that fish in Lake Ontario are not reproducing because of the contaminants. We know that the mink around Lake Michigan no longer reproduce because of what they're eating from the lake. And we know that in many, many fish and streams, there are many fewer snails, clams, insects because of what's present in the water in those streams.
In some instances, the bottom of the food chain, things like zooplankton and phytoplankton, green plants in the water, those things are more sensitive than the fish. But if you kill off the bottom of the food chain, then your fish don't have anything to eat. And so you've ruined the whole ecosystem at that point.
It's been found that birds that have been exposed to some of these chemical agents will produce eggs that have very thin shells. And because the shells are very thin, the developing embryo is susceptible to being damaged or crushed because of the thin eggshell that surrounds it.
Where do PCBs come from and how do they get into the water?
Have animals in the wild been harmed? Which chemicals have harmed the animals?
There's a whole variety of chemicals that have been involved in different spills and poisonings. There have been some of the chemicals like the dioxins and the PCBs. There have been insecticides like DDT and parathion. There have been problems with heavy metals.
Well, dioxin is really an extraordinarily toxic compound. It just takes very few molecules of dioxin to perturb or change the way cells normally function. If you had a drop of water and that water was dioxin and put it in the lake, that would really be too much dioxin for what current regulations would allow.
Which chemicals are of most concern to people?
We do have problems, particularly with underground storage tanks. We do have groundwater contamination problems.
These chemicals are commonly detected in wells because they mobilize well in the soil and make their way down into the groundwater that you and I drink. And some people have reported nausea, vomiting, and gastrointestinal problems.
almost any kind of health problem you can imagine has been seen in some experimental setting or in looking at health effects of people. So they can affect fertility, they can affect the way your heart works, they can be associated with cancer. So almost anything you could think of that would be a possible bad health effect could have some environmental factor.
Now that we had a better idea of what was affecting our stream, we all wanted to know what we could do. So we asked local environmental activists some questions.
How can we prevent the raw sewage in the creek?
What are your feelings about paving paths for walking?
What can we do to get the town involved in it?
Once a group of kids has an idea what they want, then the next question is to find out in the local area who are their friends, who are their allies.
We've had rules on the books for a number of years to try and help protect streams, but the main thing that we can do in a developing area like Chapel Hill is to try and prevent development from occurring in a way that sends pollution into the streams.
And it's real important that when we put the stencil down, we make sure that we lay it real flat so that you can read the message.
I know it's successful when people come up to me and say, wow, I never knew those drains go to the creek. In that way, I know that the two goals I'm trying to get at have been met. People are catching on. They're making the connection between that storm drain and what flows into it and where it ends up. Not it just goes away. It's going somewhere, and that somewhere is a valuable resource that we should be protecting, not polluting.
The most important things get accomplished on a local basis. I mean, you can pass big laws about what's going to happen every place in the country, but it depends on people in their own backyards keeping their eyes open before there's ever going to be enforcement of those laws.
We decided to take the activists' advice. We presented the idea of stenciling storm drains to the town council. I was kind of nervous, but when my turn came, I was ready.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the regular meeting of the Chapel Hill Town Council. Our first item on the agenda, a presentation by Culbreth Middle School concerning neighborhood creek and stream safety.
Someone from each of our teams had a chance to speak. Some of us explained what we had learned, and one of our teams asked for permission to stencil the storm drains that run into our creek.
All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed nay. Matter passes unanimously. Thank you very much. You've done a great service to the town.
And we even made the headline. At that point, even my parents started thinking we were really doing something in school. Our club came to stencil storm drains, clean up the stream, and I even found my favorite hat.
I think the individual is the key to our long-term success in having healthy, clean streams. Everyone has got to understand that they are part of the problem and they are part of the solution, and until they understand that, we can have as many regulations and on the books, but if people don't accept that they need to do something, we won't get there. We won't reach our goals.
For a copy of this program and user's guide, write Environmental Media, P.O. Box 1016, Chapel Hill, North Carolina, 27514, or call 1-800-368-3382.